Hi everybody, this will be nice and quick since we only have one chapter to cover this week. But first of all, let's start off with some housekeeping. The most important thing that you could take away from this entire lecture is that Friday is your last day. So Friday, 11:59, the class ends at that time. And right here in bold and red, it says, nothing will be accepted after the course ends. And that could not be more true. So make sure you're planning your week out appropriately. Get your assignments done. It doesn't matter what the reason, but there are no extenuating circumstances here. Everything must be in by 11:59 this Friday, June 15th. Alright, that being said, let's look at the digestive system. We all know that our digestive system is the way our body processes food, but it also extracts the nutrients from that food and then creates the waste, which then is eliminated from our bodies. There's two types of digestion, mechanical and chemical. Mechanical is the actual breakdown of the food, breaking into smaller chunks, and chemical digestion is using chemicals like enzymes and other digestive juices to break down the molecular structure that is then absorbed into our bodies as nutrients. There's two parts to the digestive system. The first one is called the alimentary organs. Alimentary just means tube. So if you have a tube that food travels down, that would be your alimentary organs. So all of these structures listed here is the pathway that food takes from the top to the bottom. So we have the mouth, the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestine, and then the rectum and anus. Two things I want to point out. A lot of people use the word stomach incorrectly. They kind of use stomach to mean like their whole abdomen. That's not how we use it medically. Medically, it's just the organ that sits at the base of the esophagus, which mixes up food with a bunch of acid. It's not your whole abdomen. The two intestines, they can be a little bit tricky because the small intestine is actually much longer than the large, but it has a very small diameter, which is where it gets that name. So the small intestine, although it's longer, has a smaller diameter, and the large intestine has a larger diameter. Okay, the other part of the digestive system are the organs that help with digestion, but they're not part of that tube that we talked about. So they're considered accessory organs. The teeth and the tongue, they help to break the food into smaller bits. And then the liver, pancreas, and gallbladder, they all work together to secrete different secretions that help to break up the food in a chemical manner. But again, they're not part of that tube, so they're called accessory organs. Alright, I'm going to run through these pronunciations fairly quickly. We have oral, stomatitis, glossopharyngeal, sublingual, chelioplasty, and labial. Then dentist, orthodontist, gingivitis, sialolith, esophagoscope, pharyngitis, gastralgia, intestinal, enteropathic, duodenoscopy, jejunography, ileostomy, appendectomy, appendicitis, colostomy, and colonoscopy, sigmoidotomy, rectocele, proctologist, perianal, proctologist, hepatitis, pancreatolysis, cholelith, cholecystectomy. So far you're probably seeing some of these words that are very closely related, like pancreas and pancreato. And then there's some that are a little bit more difficult to remember, like liver and hepato. There's really no similarities between that word and the combining form. So my suggestion this week is to focus on the ones that are more difficult. So if you're kind of strapped for time and you don't have enough time to make all of your flashcards, make the ones that look the most difficult. So find the ones that don't match up with the word as well. focus on that, and that should help you get through the final exam a little bit better. There are quite a few suffixes that pertain to this chapter as well. We have hyperemesis, splenomegaly, anorexia, dyspepsia, and polyphagia. Right, then let's dive into the words that don't fit our word puzzle. The first one is an ulcer. An ulcer can be anywhere in our body, either outside on our skin or inside any of our organs. We use it in this chapter because it's very common to get gastric ulcers. So remember, gaster means stomach, so gastric ulcers would be an ulcer inside the stomach. It's just an opening where there shouldn't be an opening. A hernia is when one organ protrudes through a space where it shouldn't be. There's many different types of hernias in the gastrointestinal system. The one that's pictured here, though, is the esophagus and the stomach. In this case, the stomach is actually pushing up through the diaphragm where the esophagus is. So the stomach is going where the esophagus should be, and that is the hernia. Next term is diverticula. If any of you have ever been diagnosed with a diverticular disease, you might understand what this is like. I will say that there's a lot of people who have diverticula that don't even know it. Diverticula are these little small pockets that form within the digestive system, usually in the last portion of the colon. And those little pockets really aren't too much of a problem unless food gets stuck in them, and that food then sits there and causes an infection in some cases. So that diverticula becomes diverticulitis when it becomes inflamed. That inflammation becomes painful. The next word is ascites. Just pretend like the C isn't there. Pronounce that without the C, ascites. Any fluid that's accumulating in the abdomen that shouldn't be there is called ascites. Alright, I skipped one. There we go. So borborygmus is that feeling that you've probably felt or you've heard, and you think, oh man, I must be hungry. There's a rumbling in my abdomen. The medical term for that is borborygmus, and that's actually going to be your key word this week. So take a minute to pause the video if you need to, and write down borborygmus. That's your live lecture keyword for Module 6. One more time, borborygmus is your keyword. Next up is colic. Colic is sometimes confused as well when we use it as a layperson. A lot of you have probably heard the term a colicky baby, and when people say that, they just mean the baby cries a lot. So that's not what colic is. Colic is actually the spasming of an organ. That's usually the colon, and that spasming can cause pain or abdominal pain. Now that term is associated with babies because people who came up with that term believed that the babies were in pain because they were having digestive issues. So there is a tie-in there, but when people say colicky baby, it's not the best way to use that word medically. It just doesn't always make sense because babies cry for a lot of reasons, right? Not just because their tummy hurts. So colic in a medical form means a spasm of a hollow organ. The next one's probably familiar to those of you who remember Oregon Trail. Dysentery is an inflammation of the intestine. It's usually caused by some pathogen getting in and then not being able to get out. So it can be any kind of toxin or irritant, something that's just bad for you that gets stuck in the digestive tract and will cause a lot of digestive symptoms. All right, last word here is peristalsis. Peristalsis is the way that food moves through your tract. So the best way I like to explain this is if you had a golf ball and you put that into a hose and you wanted to move the golf ball down the hose, you might be able to squeeze the hose with your hand and then pull it down, right? So kind of slide that golf ball through the hose. That's what happens to your food in the digestive tract. Peristalsis, the muscles of your tract squeeze and then push that food in one direction from mouth to anus. Only a few abbreviations this week. So BM is bowel movement. GERD, that is heartburn. It stands for gastroesophageal reflux disease or disorder. The D in that word can go either way. Then IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and ultrasound. I know that's not a new word for us, but US means ultrasound, and we put it in this chapter because ultrasound is a good way to find out what's going on in the abdomen if we don't have enough symptoms to make a diagnosis. Okay, so now into the activities this week. Make sure you're using those knowledge checks. That'll help prepare for your exam. As far as the study guide goes, there is a new study guide in this module, but I want you to remember to use all of your study guides to study for the final exam. The final exam is completely cumulative, so week 1 through week 6, and I want to make sure that you're using all of those study guides and all of the flashcards that you've created over this term to study for the final, because it's not just the digestive system that you're being tested on this week. Okay, then in bold, the most helpful thing you can do this week is to take the practice final exam. It is completely ungraded, right? It's a practice exam, so there's no grade attached to it. Make sure that you take a look at your answers. Now, it's not going to tell you the right answer, but it will tell you if you got one wrong. And it is completely inclusive. The only difference here between this and the real final is that the practice final includes lots of different types of questions. So you'll see multiple choice, some short answer, multiple response. When you take your actual final, it will be just multiple choice. All right, your assignments this week, there is one more course project. You'll see that, and you guys are used to that by now. You know the drill. Just get that Word document uploaded. The final exam is 40 multiple choice questions. Like I said before, it covers everything in the course. But here's something that is very rare. You get 2 attempts at your final exam. I don't know that you'll find any other class that gives you 2 attempts. So your best score will be counted toward your grade. If you take your first attempt and you think, oh, that's good enough for me, and you're satisfied with that score, you don't have to do it twice. That's just up to you. But if you do want to see if you can improve a little bit on that second score, you can take it twice, and the best score will count. It's a timed exam, so 40 minutes for 40 questions, and you've already got your live classroom keyword because I mentioned that earlier this week. I'm sorry, earlier in the lecture. So let's finish up here. Make sure you contact me via course messages if you have trouble. There's tons of resources out there if you need some help getting ready for your final exam, and I am available all week for you if you need anything else. Remember, Friday is the final day, June 15th, 11:59 p.m. All right. Good luck on your final and have a great break week. Thanks.